Well, at this point I'd struggle to label them friend or foe. They might be corrupting data on purpose, but it's all just part of a larger machination.
I was in school when I first read about the Talos principle. I think it disturbed me at the time, made me hyper-aware of my body as a physical object, the material reality of the brain, ideas that made me uncomfortable at first, but I think in the long run, it helped me understand how frail human beings are and how precious. It's not a comforting way of thinking about the world, but I'd rather face the truth than lie to myself.
I'll tell you what makes me feel frail. This hub. Not only because I don't know whether I'm weatherproof, and I'm probably a beacon for lightning. The world is subject to so much change. It's out of my control. I can't even blame it on air pressure or prevailing winds. I saw an object over here, something fresh and new in these suddenly darkened lands. A pot of white paint. Now I know we saw some paint on the shelf of the shrines, where we could summon the messenger, but I didn't make the connection at the time. I figured I'd need to use it somewhere, so I ran back to the only other object I could interact with. As you can see, no luck here. My second thought was that I could maybe doctor the existing message over on that wall. I briefly considered taking it back to the temple, but that seemed unlikely. So here my initial thought was Dark Souls, though I don't think there's any interplayer interaction. Imagine though the stuff you could do with predefined messages. Anyway, I didn't want to be overly negative. I didn't want to confess to not knowing what was going on. So some non-specific, irrelevant advice it is. What I'm really holding out for now is sometime in the future, a puzzle game where players can leave messages as to the solutions, and the puzzles are all built with that in mind. It would be a heck of a challenge, but something good could come out of that. I'm doing these puzzles right to left for no particular reason, though I think it turned out alright. Well, I don't imagine them stretching. It's all a facade. I'm going to assume my robot brain knows what a game is, knows that any particular space has its limits. I promise myself not to deal too much with the existentialism of that. It's a bit too obvious. I'm looking for gaps in the hedges. Anything's a hiding spot on such a gloomy day. This orb is damaged and unthreatening. Oh, our first box. Let's see what this thing can do. So the jumping is contextual. I know last episode had a lot of platforming, but it looks like that's only necessary for completely optional stuff. I still wanted to see whether I could get onto any of these walls. The answer is no. Not yet. So upon hearing about the Talos project, Alexandra felt quite frail. I imagine working as the project lead on an attempt to design something without so many human flaws would make her, and anyone, feel just as frail. So the first log told us what EL stands for. The deific interpretation is probably intentional, like NOW, the National Organization for Women. It stands for Extended Lifespan. It's an international supercomputer, founded by Arcady, the archives guy. So, aggressive as that was, it felt like something worthwhile getting out of the way as soon as possible. Now I know exactly what I'm dealing with when I see one of them around. And these boxes have a fair amount of utility. I just solved the puzzle by blocking in the orb, but I could have put the tripod on the box and used it to go over the top, I expect. One last experiment. I know it takes my body a couple of seconds to break the connection. Yeah, the orbs do it instantaneously. Now we know. I can't take objects with me over ladders. I found that out in my own time. A message pops up if you get up close. And wow, that is an annoying sound. One last thought I had while leaving here. I can see another room from this vantage, so you never know when that might come in handy. The extended lifespan supercomputer is incredibly durable and has a near inexhaustible power supply, so it follows that they're supplying the hardware for the Talos project, and everyone's plugging all the archive data and AI code into it. It reminds me of the Long Now Foundation. If you're not aware of it, one of their projects is a library that contains all of the text that best represents our progress as a civilization, including the most representative works from various genres. The idea is that all of these works are printed microscopically, and there are instructions for creating a microscope that could read the text. By avoiding materials that degrade, it would just last. They often bandy about 10,000 years. And one of the notions is that someone coming across it could rebuild civilization, if that was a pressing concern. They've been working on a long server since 1999, which I suppose would fulfill a lot of what EL is trying to do. I'm not sure whether the Extended Life Institution was set up in response to whatever the imminent catastrophe about to befall mankind is. Nowadays, would a global threat in the real world, another Cold War for instance, accelerate the Long Now projects? I don't know. As talking in terms of society as a whole, I'm sure the people working on the projects currently would be more than happy to continue. I'm sort of talking past these puzzles as the logical steps are fairly obvious, I hope. It's getting darker again. It seems to coincide with me solving these puzzles. Hey, it's not too far-fetched to think I have some sort of influence over the world, in my position. I'm not sure why the rain has led to me having a more somber tone this episode. It's darker, sure, but I like the rain. I like variation in weather, I like the sound, I like the effect. It's probably the storm. We don't get very many. I've never come to terms with them fully. There's too much going on for me to just sit back and enjoy. Even staring out the window, seeing the lightning strike far off in the distance. Yeah, and hearing the thunder rolling in, timing the delay to calculate the distance. And now that I know pretty much entirely how lightning works, it still wells up something really basic inside me. So this puzzle is cool. It's got a setup demonstrating how we can boost a laser over a fence, and I show off conclusively here that lasers will not travel through the fences, despite the gaps. It would be nice to be able to carry more than one thing at a time. At least it would look great in third person, but there's plenty of things I can live without if the mechanics are good enough. I almost selected let's call it the receiver over there, but I thought, time for another experiment. While a laser can't travel through a fence, we can however select a receiver through a fence. It's going to come in useful if the situation arises where I have to connect the connector to something I can't reach myself. They made it really dark in this section. I'm impressed at the gusto and the fact that none of the puzzles seem to suffer for it. I didn't write that. Not that I'm counting, but this is the thing that's most disturbed me so far. It basically sums up the response I had when I read version 17's very similar message. Anyway, shake it off and carry on. This room is a bit chaotic. The area at the far end is alive with red tracking beams. A solitary orb, the explosive kind, moves back and forth behind this fence. And in the centre of the room, a box awkwardly sits in the way of yet another orb. In total we have, counting it out for the people watching this at low quality, 1, 2, 3 turrets. Bop. And to deal with all of this, the only things at our disposal are, well, there's a shrine. Hopefully there's no penalty for asking for help when I know I won't receive any. Actually, all I've got to play with, and I notice there's no symbol for this when you enter the room, is a single jammer. I've just got to stand on this side of the room and cause havoc, like those squirt gun mounts at water parks. There are too many turrets. If I knock one out, the other two can cover the area. But you know what they can't cover? Anytime. I'm lucky that EL didn't program in any shrapnel. That landed way too close. The rest of this puzzle just sort of happens, so let's look at the second log. It's a pretty weighty question from Alexandra Drennan, who appears to have written at least 198 other questions on the subject. I'm glad she's working on something that aligns so closely with our interests. So should AIs be granted citizenship? That's only the first point. She then preemptively answers any arguments against by bringing up the personhood of animals. Also, I found a star, no biggie. She mentions that corporations can be considered persons, but I'm not going to touch that. I can't be bothered. Animals then, sufficiently intelligent ones. Hang on a sec, switches also exist. Be you robot, box, or robot holding a box, placing yourself on these switches will do a thing. What exactly does Sheep think is overzealous here? The amount of puzzles? The number of different coloured sigils? There are only 3 sheep, though I don't know how difficult counting comes to you. Maybe he thinks the whole thing's over-engineered and he'd rather stick to Tetris, or a sliding block puzzle. Rubble status, still feasible. Won't be stacking any blocks in weird orientations anytime soon. So animals as persons. Don't think I have a particularly strong opinion on this. I hope it's not too extreme to state that animals can't do what people can do. I'll entirely concede that they can hope, care, love, dream, do menial tasks. A crow could probably complete all these puzzles pretty easily. Then again, it would just be able to fly to the end, so... But coexistence? With some, maybe, but... oh, I don't know. There are plenty of people who study, live among wild animals, and while of course they make plenty of claims as to their intelligence, I haven't seen any grand movement towards trying to make them accepted into a position alongside mankind. I'm not prejudiced, though I do like some of the maps by early explorers that label half the islands in the world with "Danger, Cannibals!" Also, more experimentation has to be done. And now for that Pressure Pad's comment section. Marvellous. They chose their medium well, and I'm completely convinced. So what can we do with 2 boxes? referring to the title of this room. Well, for a start, we can stack them. We can then get on top of that stack, but still can't reach any of the walls. We can try again in a different position, and the results are exactly the same. Yep, that's where I just came from. I'm not getting anywhere. I can't pick up a box while I'm standing on it, even if I jump, and contextual jumps are not confined just to the boxes. That was for everyone who thinks this is similar to Portal. Well, that's what comes to mind when I think about Portal. Anyway, another thing to do with boxes is to notice that that statue is slightly shorter than the surrounding walls. I'd try that stacking thing again, because it worked so well before. Oh wait, really? Alright then. So, don't worry about the following footage. I do jump off eventually and solve the puzzle legitimately, but I thought it was worth showing off how just breakable these environments are. I really didn't try very hard to do this. One excellent thing I heard about the development of this game was that an AI was developed to play through these levels during development. It could play through the whole game in about 20 minutes, and it apparently helped them iron out a lot of unwinnable situations, whilst they were iterating through designs or making some changes to mechanics.
The beginning were the words, and the words made the world. I am the words are everything. Where the words end, the world ends. You cannot go forward in an absence of space.
So that's the failsafe when you try to wander outside the world. I've gone back and checked. I took a step further just as Elohim finished what he was saying, so there isn't anything else he would have said. If you stay in one spot right on the boundary, he'll continue to repeat those words over again. It's time to guiltily press onward and look at the rest of this puzzle from the ground this time. Before that, more experimentation. Force fields. Can you block them with a box? Sorry, a tetrahedron. I mean, they've been so versatile so far. Nope. Looking at the footage, I kinda wish I'd tried using the box as a shield. When the orbs spot you, they kind of rush at you, so maybe the box could get in the way? Explosions work like that, right? Poor Apis, version 8. We will succeed where they failed. I sincerely hope. Thanks, Ted. It's kind of interesting that Always Right, who was in that conversation about the tetrahedron, was version 7. Either they couldn't make it past here either, or they made it and then the subsequent version was slightly inferior. Sarcasm. I don't know about you, but I've never known a new version of a software to be inferior to the previous one. I brought the box with, which was the right choice to make. I don't want to sound overblown, but I can imagine people having trouble with that one. I brought it with me over this wall too, which was unnecessary, just led to more messing around. Ah, poor Faith. You could do it, I believe in you. I wish I could write a message to that effect. It's a good point though, are we here for any particular purpose? Again, reading lots of messages from the same version has led to their character coming through a bit, and they do have distinct characters. If nothing else, Faith's purpose could be to try and see whether their character is compatible with whatever it is we've got here. Here's that messing around with the box I mentioned. Two things that come out of this. One, I do like the way the box falls off these ledges. It's very final. Secondly, while I can stand on the ground and stack a box on top of another box, I can't stand on the ground and put a box on top of a ledge. Anyway, this clearly isn't the right way to go about this. There's a barrier blocking the star off, but I haven't even found out how to get to that barrier, and now I'm just looking back the way I came. The third text file is again about Athena, and once again it contains a technical revision, this time of the Sphinx, with gears in its jaws and rust in its teeth. And again it's analogous to our situation. Each one of these puzzles is a riddle, patrolled by so-named mute children of Hephaestus. But the ultimate riddle is why? Why is this all here? Why are we doing this? Why aren't the sigils just lined up in a row? Why am I trying to get this star? That is a good question, and also a terrible one. I can see it needs a red laser, if only I could get over this wall. When I looked to the right, I noticed this whole area sandwiched between this room and the next one along. And then there's this bit of wall, but you can't go around it like you could in the first hub. Instead there's just this cable. So you follow the cable, not over the wall but under it, and what do you get? Applause? No. A switch though. I far prefer this puzzle over the one in the first hub, because you can see the star, you know what you're aiming for. Asking someone to investigate a whole map turns it into busy work. It's not a challenge, it's just challenging. It's tedious. Anyway, even better, this is only half of it. We've got a connector, but no lasers in sight. And I reset the one across the hub when I went out of bounds. Luckily the range on these things is silly. So now I was feeling quite pleased with myself. I'd solved the puzzle legitimately, and I'd found what was probably a challenging star just by following the signs. I deliberated a bit whether to bother with this or not, and in the end thought, yeah, I'm sure it's of interest to someone. Followed swiftly by the thought that, oh, I left that box trapped on the other side of that wall. So I think that's the first time showing off that I can do it myself. What the heck? I've got a built-in button on my hand that undoes all my mistakes. A dagger of time filled with unlimited sand. Willfully ignoring the fact that it's a necessary game mechanic for a second. That's a terrible lesson to teach a burgeoning person, for whom things like accountability and responsibility are quite important concepts. It gives me a good environment to do experiments in. Experiments like, if I kill all these humans, will anyone notice? Will anyone be able to stop me? Not to mention I'm now teaching myself that I'm above all of these petty puzzles. I make my own rules, and if you've got a problem with that, well then I tested them quite thoroughly, thank you. With controls, double blindfolded, everything. Back to the Athena text, it seems like they're going to be information that sort of trickles in over the course of the game, with a few new ideas here and there. So they're not something I can dwell too long on. There you have it, and this would work even though the wall is up and the barrier is still active, because when the room's reset, you get to keep all your collectibles. But once you know where the switch is, this isn't all that special, so let's take it one step further. By which I mean, get ourselves trapped in an enclosed space with no way out. See what I mean about not having repercussions? It leads to crazy ideas like this. I can see forever. I don't know if there's a word for this. Anyway, I feel a sense of achievement. I hope you can vicariously. But I have a fear of losing my autonomy, so I'm getting out of here. Well, deleting my account would be a step backwards. I don't want to go through the whole process again. At least if I email, I might see some new content. If you'll allow a bit of metagaming. Bureaucracy circles. Well, heck. It knows. It knows I'm in denial, and I'm harbouring megalomaniac tendencies that manifest themselves by jumping into places I'm not supposed to be. Elohim is silent. The terminals speak to me now. And all of you, join my experiment. Go out and do whatever you like. I can rewind time. No, I'm serious. Drive recklessly, punch your boss. No one need ever make a mistake ever again. I'm kidding. I'm a nice AI.